Welcome to today's presentation. Today, I'll be going over Administrative Guide Procedure 330.03, line of duty injury or death. I'm very happy to say that they rewrote this procedure in 2021 and they made it a hell of a lot easier. This is a procedure that's on all promotional exams, sergeants, lieutenants, and captains. We begin with the definition of the investigating supervisor. We're going to go over this now at the beginning of the procedure, and then just before we go over the duties of the investigating supervisor, I will go over this definition again. Who the investigating supervisor is: a supervisory uniformed member of the service in the rank of sergeant or above that is assigned to the injured uniformed member of services command. It might be the patrol supervisor, platoon commander, or duty captain. Those are the examples they give you. And if unavailable, a supervisory uniformed member of service within the precinct of occurrence will perform the tasks of the investigating supervisor. Now, let me give you 3 examples that will demonstrate who the investigating supervisor should be. The first is very basic and general. You have an officer who's assigned to the 81st precinct, and he gets injured in the 81st precinct. Well, a sergeant above from the 81st precinct will be the investigating supervisor. And it could be the platoon commander, patrol supervisor, or even a duty captain. And then what happens if we have an officer assigned to the detective bureau, maybe from the 81st precinct detective squad? They are assigned to the detective bureau. When that officer gets injured in the 81st precinct, well, a detective bureau supervisor, sergeant above, will be the investigating supervisor. And then we have the last example. What happened if that detective bureau officer gets injured in the 81st precinct, but the detective bureau supervisor, sergeant above, is unavailable? Then it falls back on a supervisory uniformed member of service from the precinct of occurrence. So the 81st precinct sergeant above will perform the duties of the investigating supervisor. Please know those 3 examples. And we're going to go over those 3 examples again when we cover this, just before we cover the duties of the investigating supervisor. And lastly, for out-of-city line-of-duty injuries, must be in a rank of captain or above. So later on in the procedure, we're going to tell you the uniformed member of the service, if he gets injured in the line of duty outside the city, he's going to be required to notify the local police authorities and the operations unit. And in that scenario, we're going to have a captain or above to investigate that incident. Now the procedure begins. Upon receiving an injury in the performance of police duty, whether on or off duty, or arriving at a location where a uniformed member of service is injured, the uniformed member of service, what will he do? Very, very basic duties. First, he's going to request a supervisor to respond, which is very vague. What supervisor that is, it doesn't say. It doesn't say the investigating supervisor, it just says request a supervisor to respond. And he will notify the desk officer of 2 things. 1, the circumstances of the injury, and 2, the name and address of witnesses. Now be careful of this point. The uniformed member of the service is the one required to notify the desk officer. And later on, we're going to talk about the duties of the desk officer, and you'll know that the desk officer only makes notifications in this procedure. But it's the duty of the uniformed member of the service to notify the desk officer of the circumstances and names and addresses of witnesses. That uniformed member of the service will request witnesses to await the arrival of a supervisor. And again, very vague, it doesn't tell you what supervisor. You should remain at the scene, but they do give you exceptions, unless hospitalization or medical attention is required, or further police action is necessary. So let me give you examples. You fall, you get hurt, you twisted your ankle, and you're injured, you should stay on the scene. But you need to go to the hospital for that injury. Go to the hospital. Or you twist your ankle chasing a perp, and you get up, dust yourself off, you're hurt, but you know what? You can continue pursuing that perpetrator. Further police action is necessary. Those are exceptions when you can leave the scene. And as I said already, and now I'm going to repeat myself, what happens if you have a line of duty injury from outside the city? I'm walking my dog in Suffolk County. I observe a robbery. I immediately pursue the perpetrator and get hurt in that pursuit. I'm injured in a line of duty outside the city. I'm going to have to notify, one, the local police authorities, the Suffolk County Police Department, and two, the operations unit. Because is a captain or above going to be responsible to investigate that injury? They will. And now we're going to go over the duties of the investigating supervisor. But before I do that, I'm going to go over the definition of the investigating supervisor again. A supervisory uniformed member of service in the rank of sergeant or above that is assigned to the injured uniformed member of service's command. And if unavailable, a supervisory uniformed member of service within the precinct of occurrence will perform the tasks of the investigating supervisor. Let's go over the three examples. I'm an 81st precinct cop and I get injured in the 81st precinct. It's going to be a sergeant above from the 81st precinct who will be the investigating supervisor. Second scenario, let's change it a little bit. I am an officer assigned to the 7-9 precinct, and I get injured in the 81st precinct. Well, a 7-9 supervisor, sergeant above, will be the investigating supervisor. And if that 7-9 sergeant above is unavailable, well, then it falls back on the 81st precinct supervisor, sergeant or above. Know your three examples on who the investigating supervisor is. And finally, for out-of-city line of duty injuries, must be in the rank of captain or above. If it's outside the city and they're injured, a captain above will investigate. So now we know who the investigating supervisor is. Now we have to go over his duties. The investigating supervisor will respond to the scene and request medical attention if necessary. Somebody needs medical aid, call an ambulance, of course. And you will interview the injured member. Officer, what happened? How'd you get injured? And investigate the circumstances. Yeah, you're investigating. You are the investigating supervisor. Let's be very careful of this next point. You will interview witnesses to ensure the preparation of, now we have two situations here. Sometimes we're going to have a witness statement, injury to the member of the department prepared, and sometimes we're going to have the line of duty injury reporting system witness statement prepared. You see, members of the service have access to this computer program, this line of duty injury reporting system. So if a member of the service is the witness, that member of the service will prepare the line of duty injury reporting system witness statement. Because he's a member of the service, he has access to it, he prepares that witness statement on the computer. But what happens if the witness is not a department witness? He's not a member of the department. Well, he doesn't have access to a computer, so we're going to have him fill out a physical form. He will prepare that witness statement, injury to the member of the department. So be careful here, because if the witness is a member of the service, he will prepare that line of duty injury reporting system witness statement, and if he's not a member of the department, he'll have the witness statement, injury to a member of the department prepared. Now, let's be careful again, because the paperwork.
Sometimes a police crash report
will be prepared, and sometimes an 80 report will be prepared. Be careful on who prepares these reports. The investigating supervisor will prepare
a police crash report, MV-104P, the PCR,
if a vehicle collision is involved. So an officer, he is on patrol and he's walking across the street, and boom, he gets hit by a car, and he is injured when he's get hit by that car. that investigating supervisor prepares.
The PCR, the police crash report, the MV104P.
Who prepares it? The investigating supervisor prepares
PCR.
when a vehicle collision is involved. But if no vehicle is involved, an officer is walking across the street, he trips and falls and sprains his ankle on the curb. He tripped on the curb. No vehicles involved. Well, now an 80 report's got to be prepared. Man, makes sense. An 80 report. But who prepares the 80 report? You will direct the injured member, or if they're incapacitated, assign a member to prepare the 80 report if a vehicle is not involved. So you, the investigating supervisor, say, officer, you tripped and fell on that curb. Prepare an 80 report for yourself. Oh, you also hurt your wrist when you fell and you broke your wrist and you can't write, you're incapacitated. Okay, Officer Jones, prepare the 80 report for Officer Yancek. There it is, so be careful.
The investigating supervisor prepares the police crash report.
The 80 report's prepared by the injured member or somebody else is assigned to prepare the 80 report. Now, this is the worst worded part of this procedure. It's very, very poorly written. You will comply with PG 22106, member of service subject to force while performing lawful duty to determine the investigating supervisor if any force is used by a uniformed member of service or civilian and anyone who sustains an injury. This is a bit confusing. You see, if you have a uniformed member of service who is injured and they were not engaging in an arrest, they're just walking across the street and they get hit by a car or they trip on the curb, well, this is the only procedure we'll follow, 330.03. But what happens if a perpetrator slaps me and I'm injured, so the slap is an assault, and I arrest him, but I don't have to use force to arrest him. He puts his hands behind his back and I cuff him. Well, I'm injured. We'd have to follow this procedure, 330.03. But in addition, I also have to follow Patrol Guide Procedure 22106, member of service subject to force while performing lawful duty. And that procedure will determine who the investigating supervisor is. But there's even a third scenario. The third scenario will be, well, I tackle a perpetrator and I get injured while I'm using force on this perpetrator. See, in that scenario, I'm injured. I have to follow this procedure 330.03. But I also have to do a force investigation because I used a level of force, level 1. I tackle him. 221.03, a force investigation will be conducted also. So I'd have to follow 221.03 and this procedure. So this is a little bit poorly written here. But you might have to follow these other two procedures if you have a uniformed member of service who is injured. And now, who prepares the line of duty injury report? Now, before I go over this point, understand the rule first, because we didn't go over the rule. The rule is the uniformed member of service who is injured prepares the report for himself. That's the general rule. And now we have to go over the exception. The investigating supervisor prepares the line of duty injury report if the injured member of service is incapacitated. So the rule is, hey, officer, you're hurt, prepare for yourself. But you're incapacitated, me, the investigating supervisor, I'll do it for you because you're incapacitated. And there it is, because now we're going to go over the general rule. So you have the exception first and then the general rule. Because the general rule is that uniformed member of service will prepare a line of duty injury report using the line of duty injury reporting system on the department internet or smartphone. And then we have two things we have to include when that report's prepared. Rule, general rule, uniformed member of service injured, do it for himself. Incapacitated, investigating supervisor does it for him. Now, two things that have to go on this line of duty injury report. First, documents related to the injury. Example, photographs, hospital discharge paperwork, etc., as appropriate. And witness information. So they specifically tell you these things have to be included on that line of duty injury report. And then we have to submit it. Who are we submitting it to? The investigating supervisor, because the investigating supervisor is going to have to review it and sign off on it. So you will, as the uniform member service is injured, after you prepared it, as long as you are able to prepare it, you prepare it, and you submit it electronically, because it's a computer form, line of duty report to the investigating supervisor. Because what is he going to do? He's going to review it. He's going to review that line of duty report for completeness and accuracy, and he's going to sign off on it. Electronically, of course, because it's an electronic form. But be careful. They give you the rule, and then they even give you an exception to the rule. You should review it, sign off it electronically prior to the completion of the tour. You want to do it before you end the tour, absent exceptional circumstances. In exceptional circumstances, you don't have to review it and sign off on it before the completion of the tour. But normally, review it and sign off on it prior to completion of the tour. Next, be very careful, because will you, the investigating supervisor, approve or disapprove this line of duty injury? No, you're not going to do either, because you will indicate the recommendation for approval or disapproval of the line of duty designation. See, the investigating supervisor just makes a recommendation. He recommends, yes, I recommend it, approval for line of duty, or I do not recommend it, I disapprove it for line of duty. It's a recommendation. And you will include findings of a review of any available body-worn camera or other video surveillance of the incident. The best way to investigate an incident is to watch it. And how do you watch it? On the body-worn camera video. How do you watch it? Retrieve video from a camera that caught the incident. So be careful here when you're reviewing it, signing off on it. You approve or disapprove? No. You recommend approval or disapproval, and include the findings of the review of the video. And there it is. You know your duties of your uniform member of service, and you know the duties of the investigating supervisor and who the investigating supervisor is. Now we're on the duties of the desk officer. And they made this really easy, because what does the desk officer do in this procedure, 330.03? Makes notifications. The desk officer, what's the only thing he does? Makes notifications. So when you're making these notifications, two things you have to know. One, who gets notified, and two, when they get notified. Who and when. You need to know who and when gets notified. So first, you have to notify the injured member's command. That's who and when, if the member is not assigned to the precinct of occurrence. The detective from the 81st Precinct Detective Squad gets injured in the 81st Precinct. Well, the desk officer is going to have to tell that member's command, the detective squad, that he has been injured. Who and when. And the desk officer, he has to make another notification. And in this situation, he's going to have to make 4 notifications. He has to notify 4 different individuals / units if the member dies or is likely to die. I want to repeat that. He's got to make these 4 notifications if the member dies or is likely to die. The desk officer will be required to notify 1, the borough commander, 2, the precinct commanding officer / executive officer / duty captain, 3, the operations unit, and 4, the medical examiner or assistant medical examiner. So please note, the desk officer is making a notification to these 4 units / individuals if the member dies or is likely to die. And then we have the notification to the operations unit. When does the desk officer have to notify the operations unit? If the member requires hospital treatment. If the member requires hospital treatment. Be very careful about this, because in many procedures in the guide, they say when a member requires hospital treatment, the operations unit has to be notified. But depending on what procedure you're in, depends upon who makes the notification. In 330.03, line of duty injuries, we know it's the desk officer's job to notify the operations unit if a member requires hospital treatment. And it's easy to remember that in this procedure. Why? Because the desk officer only makes notifications. And lastly, when does desk officer has to notify the sick desk supervisor or the sick desk? 4 situations the desk officer has to notify the sick desk supervisor or the sick desk. He notifies the sick desk supervisor or the sick desk when any of the following conditions relating to a line of duty injury exists. First situation when notification is required. Incident causing an injury was not specifically witnessed and injury occurred within any police facility. Example, building, office, etc. So 2 elements are required here to satisfy this situation on when the desk officer must notify the sick desk supervisor, sick desk. Not witnessed. Nobody's seen the officer getting injured, and it happens within any police facility. So an officer is in the precinct and he's in the stairwell by himself. He falls down the stairs and gets injured. Nobody's seen him fall down the stairs. And the injury occurred within the police facility. Does the desk officer notify the sick desk supervisor in the sick desk? Yes. He will notify the sick desk supervisor or the sick desk. Second situation when the desk officer has to notify the sick desk supervisor or the sick desk. Incident causing injury was not specifically witnessed, and the injury occurred in the immediate vicinity of any police facility, parking lot, perimeter sidewalk, etc. Let me give you an example. Your tour just started, you're out in the parking lot. In the parking lot there's a pothole, you trip in the parking lot, fall in that pothole, twist your ankle, and get injured. Look around, nobody witnessed you fall in that pothole. Not witnessed, and in the immediate vicinity of any police facility, desk officer notify the sick desk supervisor or sick desk. Third situation, incident causing injury was not specifically witnessed, and injury occurred during the first 2 hours of the tour. You are in Sector Adam, first tour of the day on the 4 to 12. You start at 1500, 1530. You get notified to respond to a domestic dispute. You and your partner respond to a domestic dispute. You're there at 1600 hours, 1 hour after your tour started. And you get out of the car, you're walking up the steps, you fall down the steps, and you get hurt. You look around, your partner's still in the car. He didn't observe you fall down the steps. You had an injury, it was not witnessed, and the injury occurred in the first 2 hours of the tour. If it occurs in the first 2 hours of the tour, desk officer notifies the sick desk supervisor or sick desk. And lastly, see the first 3 situations when the desk officer has to notify the sick desk supervisor, sick desk, the incident was not witnessed. This last situation where you have to notify the sick desk supervisor, sick desk, it doesn't matter if it's witnessed or not. For any request for a line of duty injury designation by an off-duty uniformed member of service. An officer, maybe walking his dog at his residence, and he sees a robbery, takes police action, gets injured, chasing the perpetrator, well, he's off-duty. Because he was off-duty, requesting line of duty designation, that's the desk officer's job to notify the sick desk supervisor or the sick desk. There it is. Know the notifications required by the desk officer. Know them inside and out. And remember, who makes notifications in this procedure? The desk officer makes all the notifications in this procedure. Now, in this procedure, 330.03, we're following this procedure when the uniformed member of service is injured or dies. And in addition to following this procedure, there is another procedure we have to follow if the member dies. If the member dies, responding members are reminded to follow PG 216.04, the Dead Human Body General Procedure. So you'll have to follow both procedure when the member dies. And we have one last duty of the uniformed member of service. He will consult the medical division's webpage on the department internet regarding line of duty prescription program coverage eligibility. Now, let me explain why this was added to this procedure. You see, if you get sick and you get a drug prescribed to you, well, when you go pick it up at Walgreens or CVS, your union pays for most of it. Okay, why? Because you're sick, you need medication, well, you got to pay for it. And your union pays for that with your union coverage. But when you're injured in the line of duty and you get a prescription for that injury, should you pay for a prescription because of a line of duty injury? No, you should not. Okay, and there was a big lawsuit over this, and the city said, okay, we'll pay for prescription medication prescribed due to line of duty injuries. And that's why they tell you consult with that web page regarding that line of duty prescription programs, because the city is going to pay for that prescription. Now, captain's duties. Starting for sergeant exam, starting for lieutenant's exam, the duties that I'm about to go over, these specific commanding officer duties, you're not responsible for, and on exam day, you won't see questions on it. But I always recommend that if you're studying for sergeant exam, studying for lieutenant's exam, that you listen to the duties, don't study them, you won't get a question on them, but you will better understand the procedure as a whole. So, if you're studying for the captain's exam, you got to know these duties inside and out. The commanding officer review all line of duty injury reports, please note here, completed by members of the command via the line of duty injury reporting system application. See, if a supervisor from your command prepares it, you're required to review it. Doesn't matter where the officer is assigned, it matters who prepared it. And if one of your officers prepared it, you will review it. Be careful here. Gotta know when a typed letterhead will be prepared to the commanding officer of the medical division. That commanding officer will prepare a report on typed letterhead addressed to the commanding officer of the medical division detailing the circumstances of the injury in 3 scenarios. 1, injured member of service is a PPO, probationary police officer. Graduated academy a month ago. He's a probationary police officer. He gets injured in the line of duty. That commanding officer prepares that typed letterhead to the commanding officer of the medical division. 2nd, injury occurred while a member of service was off duty. There it is, off duty, injury. Commanding officer prepares that typed letterhead to the CO of the medical division. And lastly, injury is reported after the end of the injured member services tour. In other words, I got injured during my tour, I went home and realized I was hurt, and I report it after my tour is over. The commanding officer will prepare that typed letterhead addressed to the commanding officer in the medical division detailing the circumstances of the injury. Be careful. Know the 3 situations when the commanding officer prepares that typed letterhead. And another report might be prepared, but this report's written to the chief of patrol. See, the commanding officer will prepare a report on typed letterhead for a line of duty death, or serious injury likely to die, very serious incidents, as per PG 21209, unusual occurrence reports. And in that procedure, it is being written to the chief of patrol. It's the chief of patrol's need to know. The commanding officer will comply with pertinent provisions of AG 33007 trauma counseling program. And for captains, that is a very important procedure that we're going to go over extensively. And he is going to ensure copies of appropriate reports are forwarded to the police pension fund if a line of duty death or serious injury likely to die occurs. Makes perfect sense. Should we send the paperwork to the pension section if somebody's dead or likely to die? Yes, they're going to need it. And there it is. Okay, we went over the duties of the uniform member of service, the duties of the investigating supervisor, and the duties of the desk officer. All right, and then, of course, we have specific commanding officer duties. Now we just have to finish off with a few additional data statements. First, when a member of service is treated at a hospital for a line of duty injury, the following information only is to be entered in the hospital records pertaining to the address and telephone number of the injured member. Police Department, City of New York, Medical Division 1, LaFrac City Plaza, and you're going to give the medical division's phone number. Members' command, home address, and telephone number will not be disclosed to hospital authority or anyone else unless authorized. Supervisory officer determines requesting person is entitled to information. The general rule is don't give your command, home address, and telephone number to the hospital. Because you know what's going to happen if you do give them that information? Well, all of a sudden, you're going to get bills in the mail, okay? And they're going to be calling you and say, you haven't paid your bill. Okay, we don't want that. That's why we give them the information for the medical division. And if that authorized supervisor officer says it's okay to give them your personal information, then you can. And what happens if you're very lucky and you're shot, but your vest saves you? When a UMOS is struck by a bullet on the protective vest and is apparently uninjured, the member service must be examined by a doctor to ascertain if a blunt body trauma or internal injury has occurred. So it's great that the vest saved you, but you better get checked out because maybe there's internal bleeding, maybe there's damage you're not aware of. Doctor's got to see you. Now, we never spoke about the patrol supervisor directly in this procedure. We talked about the investigating supervisor. But there is one specific duty of the patrol supervisor in this procedure. When an injured member of the service is hospitalized or dies, it's the patrol supervisor's job to ensure that firearms, department property, and even give you examples of department property, like your shield, like your identification card, like your nameplate, etc., and personal effects of members are removed and safeguarded. That's right, hospitalize or die, patrol supervisor safeguard his property. And then we got to talk about FECA, this Federal Employee Compensation Act. Uniformed member of service and or their families may be entitled to both medical and financial benefits under the Federal Employees Compensation Act, FECA, if a federal statute was violated and the injury occurred while apprehending or attempting to apprehend an individual who violates that statute. So a bank robbery is a federal statute, and you get injured apprehending a perpetrator for that bank robbery. Well, the investigating supervisor has to document that. The investigating supervisor will make an entry on the line of duty injury report indicating whether the injury comes under the FECA or whether FECA does not apply in the case. He's got to indicate FECA applied here or FECA didn't apply here. And if FECA does apply, we have a captain's duty snuck in here. The captain, if the injury comes on the FECA, the member's commanding officer will forward the paperwork to the medical division, attention federal compensation liaison officer, 1 LaFrac City Plaza, and they give you a timeline. It's got to be done within how many days? Within 90 days. The commanding officer forwards the paperwork within 90 days. Within 90 days, if the injury falls under this FECA, this Federal Employees Compensation Act. And the last point in this procedure, it is a bit vague and very poorly written. In unusual circumstances, when a line of duty designation cannot be made expeditiously, pending the results of an investigation or other circumstances, the ranking officer responsible for forwarding the line of duty injury report to the medical division will have a report prepared on typed letterhead, clearly indicating the reason for the delay and the approximate time period required to complete the investigation. My problem with this statement is this. First, they don't tell you who the ranking officer is. And they say the ranking officer is responsible for forwarding a line of duty injury report. Who's required to forward it? The procedure doesn't tell you who forwards it. But that ranking officer who's required to forward it has to prepare the typed letterhead. And they even give him a deadline. The typed letterhead will be forwarded to the medical division within 60 days for the date that the initial request for line of duty designation was made. And subsequent reports will be forwarded for each additional 60-day period if necessary. And then that's why I think it's very poorly written. Because who is this ranking officer? I really don't know who this ranking officer is. But the ranking officer responsible for forwarding the line of duty injury report is required to do this report if the line of duty designation cannot be made expeditiously. And there it is, 330.03, line of duty injury or death.
This procedure was effective on May 5th, 2026, and last revised by Revision Order Number 33 of 2026.
My name's Mike Yanisic. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to email me anytime at mike@elitestrategictraining.com or you can email my son Connor at elitestrategictraining.com. Or you could call us at 516-761-9101. Keep studying, stay focused, and stay motivated. Until next time.